being silent. Well, I don't know. Maybe you guys are being converted over into into the Trump camp, like Palin was, because I'm not the only person who just absolutely knew that Palin was going to come down on the side of Cruz, and I gotta. One can only wonder, what Cruz is really feeling about that. And I understand what a lot of people are saying about Cruz. Yeah, he could really rack up the evangelical vote. Unfortunately, I know some people are going to say, "Well, it's not all about religion, Rod." I know, but yeah, he could really Trump in the primaries. Trump may have an issue with garnering the evangelical vote. I get that, and Cruz could very easily get that. But unfortunately, the evangelicals are not in states that are going to give Cruz the nod. They're not in New York. They're not in California. Evangelicals are not in Texas and Florida and Ohio. Evangelicals are not in New England. They're not in Illinois. These are areas that Cruz is going to have to win in order to get the nomination. And then he's going to have to translate those into wins in the general election. Trump can do that. I can see that. I know some people are saying, well, geez, Rod, that means that. No. It's not impossible for Cruz to win those states. But during the primary process, I think it's going to be more difficult. Now, if he gets the nomination, yes, indeed, I can see Cruz winning Florida. I can see him. He might have a tough time. Well, no, I can see him winning Pennsylvania. He's going to have a tough time in California and New York and half of the New England states. I really see that. If Bernie Sanders is the nominee for the Democrats, then Cruz cannot win Vermont. However, if Hillary is the nominee for the Democratic Party, Cruz can very well win Vermont. And he can win New Hampshire and Maine. Where he would have problems is Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. I know, Sanders is from Vermont, but by far, the three southern New England states are by far the most liberal in the region. They really are. And Maine is trying to make a conservative comeback. It's going to be a struggle for them. I understand that, but they're trying to. Excuse me. And Vermont still has a lot of conservative values. There's no gun licensing really in Vermont. And that would locking people's ability to get a gun down is very liberal. Well, that you can't. I don't see anybody. Not even Sanders really is talking about taking people's guns away in Vermont. Sanders isn't even really a gun control advocate as much as the other Democrats are, and that's because he's from Vermont. He can't. So there is still a sense of conservatism in the state of Vermont, even though they've been going since just before Howard Dean. They've been going liberal. But they still have a certain sense of conservatism. Now, the southern three states, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, those are pretty much lost causes. I mean, they're going to be ultra liberal for the next generation. They really are. I don't see that changing. Although Massachusetts did elect a Democratic governor, or excuse me, a Republican governor. But they've had Romney too, and a few others, but they're not really conservative people. They're more in line with the blue blood, moderate type of Republican. Okay, but I don't see them going conservative, at least for another generation. And we're talking another 20, 30 years. It's just not. It's not. Look what they're doing in Connecticut. Even though some of the people are starting to wake up over there, and they realize that the economy in Connecticut is behind the eight ball, and they know it's behind the eight ball, but they keep doubling down on their ultra liberal policies, making it worse. People are leaving Connecticut, and it's kind of like California. And what they're doing is, instead of saying, "Okay, what are we doing wrong? Let's try something new," No, Connecticut and California are doubling down on their stupid policies. It's just it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. But yeah, well, there you go. One of the things I need to do right now is to clean. I don't like to leave loose ends for the show, so I got to clean up my thoughts on not growing up in America. Right. So right now we've got a bunch of people in America that have not grown up. Now, technically speaking, by their age, they're legally adults, but they haven't grown up. And as I've mentioned, I can't listen to Mark Zuckerberg, who's the CEO, founder, blah, 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 of Facebook, because he's 30 years old. Well, he may be, he's over 30 now, right? He's 30 at least. 30, one of the youngest self-made billionaires on the planet. And he sounds like he's still in high school when he talks. But he's not the only one. If you listen to millennials, I can tell almost instantly when I'm talking to somebody under the age of 30 that they are under the age of 30. Simply because of their speech pattern and how they sound and their maturity level. It's awful. Now, you would expect in this day and age that an 18 or 19-year-old would still, going just off to college, the first time that they've been away from mommy and daddy, you would expect them to still be a little immature, still high schoolish. But by the time they become college seniors and they get into graduate school, now you're talking 22 years old, 24, 25, you would expect to hear and see at least some modicum of maturity. I'm not seeing it. And that's also being reflected in a lot of our media, our television and programs, and our movies. This is one of the reasons why I don't watch a lot of TV. But I'm watching some of these programs that are geared towards the millennials, and these people that are these people on these shows that are geared towards millennials, they're immature as well, and it's not like the TV sitcom Friends. It's not, although that was, a couple of the people on it's one thing to have, an airhead on your TV show, on your sitcom. A lot of sitcoms have had one person. They've had the token airhead. Now, Friends is a little different that they didn't have one token airhead. They had two main character airheads. Well, that was a first. And it's only gotten worse to the point now when you can watch some sitcoms and it seems like the entire main cast are airheads. And now now it's gotten to the point where it seems like you have the token smart mature person. And that token smart mature person is looked down upon as being boring and stodgy and old-fashioned. And this is what our millennial generation is growing up with. This is what they're seeing. I mean, it's just, no, folks, if you think I'm wrong, just pay attention to, cable network. You've got Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon gears its nighttime programming to millennials. It's a cartoon channel. The Cartoon Network does the same thing. Well, I think it's called Boomerang now or something, right? It does the same thing. You get past 5 or 6 p.m. and they switch over and start gearing they're not gearing towards, the baby boomers or Generation X. They're gearing their programming towards the not yet grown up adults of the millennials. And this is carrying straight. Now, we're getting to the point where these kids are starting to approach 30. You got the first You got the first wave, if you will, who are now just, getting over the hump of 30. They're now 31, 32, 33. And yet they're still acting like they're in high school. And this is a huge problem. This is a major problem. So now, not only do we have the dumbing down of this country through our educational system, now we have this Peter Pan syndrome, which is really a real thing now. And it was brought about by, I hate to say it, it was, one of the things that that you'll see in a lot of sociology classes and Psych 101, there is a generation that is considered to be the adult generation. And I'm not talking about the World War II generation. They're unfortunately, they're starting to die off. And I know that they have that generation has huge regrets of what they did with the baby boomer generation. It was a success of the country, and they thought that they would, because each successive generation always worked hard to let, the parents wanted their children's lives to be better than their life. And that carried over into the 20th century. Into mid-20th century, right after World War II, those parents, continuing what their parents had did, thought the same thing. I want my kids' lives to be better than even mine. And mine wasn't so bad as a kid. I want my kids' lives to be even better than mine. So they worked their butts off. The greatest generation worked their butts off, and they kind of spoiled their kids. First time that people could actually do that. There's nothing wrong with it. The problem is that the baby boomers then entered the 60s and 70s and said, you know what? We kind of like being spoiled. We don't really want to grow up. Now, in the 80s, they were kind of forced to grow up. But what they remembered was, hey, I really being young. I really, because previous generations, they move throughout their stages proudly, their stage in life proudly. Okay, I'm in my teens now. I'm a teenager. Yay. College. Yay. College is done. I'm in my 20s. Yeah, now is the time to really, start to buckle down, think about the family and that type of thing, get a job. And then the 30s, now you're in your 30s. Now is a time to really, really work hard. But the baby boomers didn't think that way. They got into their 20s and they're like, I like being a kid. They get in their 30s. Man, I wish my kid days, my 20s, teens and 20s could last forever. They get in their 40s. Man, I look and feel kind of older. I wonder if I can get back to my 20s. And they get in their 50s and 60s. I don't like this dying thing, man. I want to live forever. I just want to be youthful forever. But at least they did grow up. But the problem is that they passed that mentality and then doubled down on it to their kids, which are the millennials, who are now perpetual youth. I mean, and our society has gone that way. If you look at our entertainers, I mean, all you got is I call it the Disney effect. I mean, every time you turn around, you've got. Let me give you an example. Justin Bieber. How old? Justin Bieber's what? 22 now. He's on his way out because he's too old. We have this perpetual ultra youth, and we've got the mainstream who's perpetuating it. We've got the kids who aren't being educated properly, who are not thinking about anything, who are thinking, yeah, it's just cool to be 16 forever, man. I'm going to be 16 forever. And now they're approaching 30, and they still have that 16-year-old mentality without an education. It's one thing to have a smart thinking 16-year-old, but how about a 16-year-old that's an airhead? They think they know everything, and yet they know nothing. When you press them and ask them a question, they give you a pat, learned answer. And then when you try to dig deeper below the surface, they go, I don't know. And they're proud to say, I don't know. There's no thought.